Buenas tardes a todos y todas. Sean bienvenidos al segundo encuentro internacional. Buenas tardes a todos y todas. Sean bienvenidos al segundo encuentro internacional de Industrias Creativas y Culturales, CultMarts 2020. Este es un espacio de formación y debate en torno a la llamada economía creativa. Les agradecemos por acompañarnos en esta transmisión. En esta su segunda versión, CultMarts hace parte del cuarto encuentro Javeriano de Arte y Creatividad. Es un evento que se realiza en el marco de los 90 años del restablecimiento de la Javeriana en Bogotá y 50 de la creación de la seccional Cali. Estamos muy contentos de que nos acompañen a lo largo de esta y la semana pasada. La programación la pueden encontrar en www.cultmarts.com. A continuación, para dar apertura al encuentro, se dirigirá ante ustedes el decano de la Facultad de Ciencias Económicas y Administrativas, doctor Andrés Rosas Bulfers.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Javier. Decanos, profesores, estudiantes y miembros de nuestra comunidad educativa, profesor Jeff Dorenfeld, director del Berklee Popular Music Institute, de Berklee College of Music, invitados especiales, señoras y señores. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas al segundo Encuentro Internacional de Industrias Creativas y Culturales, CultMarts 2020. Nos complace encontrarnos por segunda vez en este espacio dedicado al pensamiento, al debate, trabajo y aprendizaje en torno a las industrias creativas y culturales. La segunda versión de este encuentro nos ha enfrentado al reto de la virtualización, que hemos asumido convencidos de que este es un momento clave para la construcción y el intercambio de conocimientos, afrontando las crisis que amenazan al sector con el impulso que caracteriza a esta comunidad universitaria. La respuesta que hemos recibido, tanto de invitados como de participantes, nos llena de ánimo y optimismo. Por esto les agradecemos e invitamos a participar de esta semana y las actividades que se han programado en ella. El valor del trabajo cooperativo para la creación y construcción es una apuesta fundamental de este evento. Este Encuentro Internacional de Industrias Creativas y Culturales es coorganizado por las facultades de Artes, Arquidiseño, Ciencias Económicas y Administrativas y Comunicación y Lenguaje, el Centro Ático, el Centro Javeriano de Emprendimiento, Design Factory Javeriana, la Secretaría de Apoyo a la Creación y el Departamento de Ciencias Políticas. Este año nos acompaña también la seccional de Cali, de la Pontificia Universidad Javeriana. Esta unión de distintas perspectivas académicas y profesionales que refleja la amplitud y riqueza de las industrias creativas y culturales. Además, CultMarts 2020 hace parte de la programación del cuarto Encuentro Javeriano de Arte y Creatividad, cuya primera semana tuvo lugar desde el 7 de septiembre y que se extiende hasta este viernes 18. El foco de esta versión ha sido la investigación, creación, dando lugar a debates y conversatorios muy estimulantes, que hayan continuidad en esta segunda semana, que pone el acento en la visión práctica de ese hacer artístico. Es decir, en actividades como la producción, distribución, circulación, comercialización y apropiación de los resultados de esas actividades investigativas y creativas. Celebramos esta convergencia y esperamos ustedes también acompañen el proceso, aportando desde sus experiencias y formaciones disciplinares. Temáticamente, el encuentro pretende abordar los nuevos escenarios que se presentan para el sector creativo a partir de las crisis derivadas de la pandemia del COVID-19. No hace falta repasar las cifras e indicadores para imaginar el impacto que ha tenido el aislamiento obligatorio sobre el sector artístico y cultural. Uno de los primeros en detener sus operaciones y quizás de los últimos en alcanzar la denominada nueva normalidad. Con este eje hemos estructurado el evento, con una charla magistral que dictará el día de hoy el profesor Jeff Dorenfeld del Berklee College of Music, en torno a las nuevas realidades de las artes escénicas y performativas post-COVID-19, y también con 3 paneles temáticos a llevarse a cabo mañana, el miércoles y el jueves, siempre a las 6 p.m. y siempre por este canal, en los que contaremos con distinguidos invitados de las industrias creativas locales para conversar sobre las transformaciones y futuros del sector. Hoy, el profesor Dorenfeld inaugura el encuentro enfocándose en el presente y futuro de la industria, con su experiencia de 3 décadas dentro de la industria musical como manager de grandes artistas multiplatino, ejecutivo de compañías de desarrollo tecnológico, fundador del Berklee Popular Music Institute, educador durante más de 2 décadas y activo participante en el circuito de mega festivales globales. Es difícil encontrar una mejor persona para compartir con nosotros qué nos puede esperar el día de mañana en el sector de la música y las artes performativas. Le agradecemos profundamente haber aceptado nuestra invitación. De igual modo, queremos agradecer a los 21 invitados de la industria que nos estarán acompañando esta semana en los paneles temáticos y a los moderadores que conducirán estos paneles. Les agradecemos a todos y cada uno de ellos su presencia, tiempo y generosidad para compartir con nosotros sus experiencias y conocimientos. No podemos cerrar esta intervención sin mencionar los difíciles días que vive Colombia. Tenemos el pleno convencimiento que este espacio, centrado en las artes y la creatividad, puede ser un motor para la regeneración de la sociedad, los individuos y las instituciones. La reflexión que se propicia al generar una conexión con la esencia sensible y empático del ser humano a través de las artes es el camino por el que apostamos para crear un mañana mejor para todos y todas en este país y en el mundo. Agradeciendo su interés, presencia, difusión y participación, nos permitimos reiterar la invitación a todas estas actividades de acceso libre y gratuito en los espacios y horarios que pueden encontrar en la página web www.cultmarts.com o solicitando mayor información en el espacio de comentarios de esta transmisión. Que disfruten de CultMarts 2020. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, doctor Rosas, por su invitación y las palabras tan generosas que nos ha ofrecido. El día de hoy tenemos el honor de contar con la presencia del profesor Jeff Dorenfeld, él es director fundador del Berklee Popular Music Institute, del Berklee College of Music en Boston. Es una de las instituciones líder en la enseñanza de música, lo que nos llena de felicidad también porque nos puede acompañar el día de hoy. El profesor Dorenfeld hace parte de esa historia y tiene una trayectoria importantísima en la industria. Es profesor en el programa de Music Business, Music Management en el Berklee College of Music. Tiene más de 20 años de experiencia en la educación y 30 en la industria. En 2015 fundó el Berklee Popular Music Institute, BPMI, un programa educativo experimental que permite a los estudiantes formarse y actuar en algunos de los festivales más grandes del mundo. Estos estudiantes han trabajado, por ejemplo, en el Lollapalooza, Governor's Ball, Outside Lands, Essence, Chicago Open Air, entre muchos otros. El profesor Dorenfeld también fue asesor en la formación del sello Heavy Rotation Records, que es dirigido por estudiantes de Berklee, y negoció con Epic y Sony Records un contrato para este nuevo sello. Antes de unirse a la academia, el profesor Dorenfeld fue manager de Boston, alcanzando un disco número 1 en Billboard y una de las giras más taquilleras de ese año. También trabajó en tareas de tour management con Sammy Hagar, con Ozzy Osbourne. Fue vicepresidente de Scholz Research and Development a cargo de la línea de productos Rockman. En su labor docente ha recibido numerosos premios, por ejemplo, el President's Award for Leadership, el Dean's Award for Teaching Excellence y el Dean's Award for Innovative Teaching. Estos son algunos de los numerosos logros del profesor Dorenfeld. Sin embargo, quizás sea un mejor resumen el que nos podemos encontrar en el video que vamos a ver a continuación sobre la labor del profesor Dorenfeld y sus estudiantes en el BPMI. Tuvimos un pequeño glitch tecnológico con el sonido, pero sí podíamos ver algo que en este momento quizás nos parece de otro mundo, que eran los festivales y las multitudes y los conciertos. Voy a cambiar al inglés ahora, que es el idioma en el que se va a realizar esta charla. I'll switch to English now. I was just saying that sadly we had a small technical glitch with the video. However, all those images we managed to see with crowds, with festivals, with concerts look like something from the distant past, I have to say, into the sixth month of the coronavirus crisis. However, in his talk today, Professor Dorenfeld will share with us how all of that came to be, this global mega festival network, the worldwide touring industry, and how he envisions the future for the performing arts once the pandemic becomes, hopefully soon, a distant memory. During the talk, don't forget that you can write your questions and comments in the link, in the space you find here, either on Facebook or YouTube. Just write a comment and we'll be happy to pass over these questions to Professor Dorenfeld for him to answer. Without further ado, Professor Dorenfeld, thank you for your time and welcome to Pontificia Universidad Javeriana.
Thank you, Professor Rodriguez and Dean Rosas. Good evening and greetings from Boston, Massachusetts. I am very pleased to be here speaking on my favorite subject, live music. A little background on me. I fell in love with the live music business when I saw the Who's first tour of the United States in 1967 at the Fillmore Auditorium in San Francisco. I was still in college, paid my $2.50 for the ticket, and it changed my life. I went to the Fillmore often, seeing Hendrix, Cream, Zeppelin, The Dead, Joplin, and many others. Those experiences inspired me to help local bands and promote shows at venues such as theaters, memorial halls, and clubs. I guess I was gaining some do-it-yourself knowledge, but I wasn't making much money. DIY was a learning experience, but I was thirsty for much more. I was working on my bachelor's degree in business, so I incorporated music business into all my course projects. I recall driving 6 hours to LA to interview agents, managers, and label executives for my class papers. Looking back, I realized if there were a music business program at my college, it would have been a great benefit for me. Courses to learn from the business, about the business, internships to put it into practice, and learn a possible job placement to get me started. I'll discuss all this more later. From promoting my own shows and working locally, I was fortunate to meet Sammy Hagar. His solo career was launching after leaving the successful band Montrose. Sam offered a tour manager position, but I had to finish my master's program, so I passed. I eventually took the position and became a tour manager, lighting director, and tour accountant. It was a learning experience I am forever grateful. I recall how I left my corporate tax course and drove to a warehouse in San Francisco to learn about lighting fixtures and design from a prominent lighting designer. He was a great teacher, and he also introduced me to other lighting industry personnel who helped me through my lighting director apprenticeship. I toured for years with Sam, doing 3 jobs, and grateful for every minute of it. In 1981, I went on tour as Ozzy Osbourne's tour accountant, and in 1982 became the manager of the multi-platinum band Boston. That's the reason I left California for Boston. We had a #1 multi-platinum album, a #1 single, and one of the highest grossing tours of 1987. Years later, I was asked to be a guest speaker at a college and found that to be rewarding as when I first started out on tour with Sam. I decided to make the transition into teaching. I developed a management touring course and was an adjunct at 3 colleges, one being Berklee. It took a while for me to learn how to teach, but within 2 years, I was offered positions at 2 colleges. I accepted the position the position at Berklee and have been there for over 20 years. My goal was always to integrate the music business with my classes. I developed the first college label to get a distribution deal with a major label. 5 years ago, I founded Berklee Popular Music Institute, which educates students in A&R, booking, contract reading, and artist preparation for major festivals. The first festival I booked was Lollapalooza. It was very exciting, so I developed scholarships, added additional festivals, booked a tour bus, and took different students and student artists out each week. We averaged 6 festivals a summer. This year we booked 7, and you guessed it, all of them were canceled due to COVID-19. And that leads me up to what I want to talk about today. Until COVID, live music is what drove the industry. It's the heart and soul of every successful performing artist. From clubs to stadiums, it is how artists generate the most revenue and develop their craft. I've always found that schools concentrate more on copyrights, publishing, and record deals. There was a time that I also felt that that is what drives the industry for artists, and spent much of my time discussing those deals. But the more I taught, the more I realized live music wasn't discussed enough in the classroom. I understand the complexity of recordings and publishing deals and how important both are for the artist's career. But I also feel that students need to understand the evolution of live music and how artists benefit from it. If we go back into the 70s, artists toured to support their albums. That surely is not the case today. Tickets were $10 in the 70s, and now top-tier artists can demand an average ticket price of over $100. Some tickets reaching into $500, and VIP packages demanding over $1,000. One can say at some point in an artist's career, recordings have become marketing tools to support for artist tours. In addition to ticket income, artists and promoters generate revenue from ancillary sources. Artists share merchandise sales, with many tours selling merchandise to over 30% of concert attendees. Promoters participate in parking and facility fees that can generate $200,000 plus at amphitheaters. Stadiums can generate $500,000 plus in just parking. Then we have concessions, sponsors, and artist branding contributing millions to the tour. These are all revenues that need to be taken into account when negotiating a tour. This is the music industry today. Artists are songwriters, recording artists, performers, and more. Artists have always been brands, and they have always owned companies such as publishing and record labels. For years, artists were reluctant to sync their music for advertising, sponsor their tours, and capitalize on their brand. It wasn't that long ago when the Doors' John Densmore turned down Cadillac and other companies to sync their music for advertising. They've turned down close to $20 million for sync licenses. I'm not making a judgment, but today most artists aren't reluctant to sync their music for advertising, use sponsors for their tours, and totally brand themselves. They have cosmetic companies, liquor companies, shoe and clothing companies, plus more. These brands can also sponsor the artist tours, benefiting the artists on multiple fronts. So why is touring such a huge revenue source compared to 30 years ago? Obviously, ticket prices have escalated as the secondary market took hold. Once the secondary market developed on the internet, managers and agents and promoters realized the actual value of a ticket. Prior years, the only information they had were their previous tours and other artist tours. In 1987, I recall doing research with our agent on previous tours of artists similar to Boston. How are they scaling their tickets? What was the average ticket price? How fast did they sell out? How many multiple shows did they sell in major cities? Once we came to a price point, we announced the tour and sold it out in hours. Could we have charged more for tickets? I think so. But the agent, promoters, and I didn't have information to make that decision. Today, they do. In 1999, everyone knows Napster disrupted the recording industry. But how many of you know what disrupted the live music industry at the same time? Robert F.X. Sillerman founded SFX in 1997 and began purchasing and consolidating concert promoters across the US. And in 2000, he sold SFX to Clear Channel Communications, a radio conglomerate, which eventually spun the company off as Live Nation, and the rest is history. Also in 2000, another company that had a major effect on the live music industry was founded, Stubhub. At that time, shows were selling tickets at face value. The secondary market, like Stubhub, swooped in, purchased P1s, price point 1 tickets, and sold them at escalated prices, twice as much, 5 times as much, and more. They demonstrated the actual value of the ticket. It didn't take long for P1s to hit $100, $200, $300 or more on the secondary market. The promoter and artist didn't participate in this markup, yet they were the reason why fans were attending the concert. To control the secondary market, they needed to raise ticket prices. Still today, P1 ticket prices are often too low, so now we see VIP and platinum tickets to justify the value of the ticket for the fan. The secondary market still exists, but promoters and artists have become better at controlling tickets than ever before. Ticketing companies like Ticketmaster have developed systems like Verified Fan to control the secondary market. They also offer dynamic pricing, which can adjust the ticket prices on the spot based on demand. Fans still have witnessed ticket prices escalation based on popularity, although now we see revenue is split between the artist and the promoter. Prior to COVID-19 bringing the world to a stop, 2020 was going to be the biggest year ever for live music. So what made 2020 special over previous years and decades? When we look back at the 70s, 80s, and 90s, rock dominated the concert industry, with pop also gaining popularity. In the 90s, we witnessed the emergence of popular country and hip hop, but there were very few artists selling arenas and stadiums. Rock was still big in the record sales and dominated in ticket sales. At the turn of the century, we started to see hip hop, country, and pop starting to dominate in music sales, but not necessarily in ticket sales. As years went by, we began to see other genres developing huge stars. In 2020, we witnessed hip hop, rock, pop, country, electronic, Latin, and R&B selling out arenas, stadiums, and even having festivals dominated by all the genres. I don't ever recall so many genres so popular. This created an explosion in ticket sales. Agents and promoters had a list of venue holds. Some venues have a dozen lined up for the tour dates. Let's look at what this looks like once we conquer COVID. The 2020 tours will reschedule, and the 2021 or 2022 tours, depending when we conquer COVID, will also be scheduling to go out. Sold out tours from 2020 will probably have priority at venues because they already have the tickets sold, and sold out shows generate more ancillaries for the venue. If we also see other major touring acts adding to the traffic jam, it will be interesting to see how the venues are able to schedule shows that work for all the tours and sporting events. As you can see, it's not difficult to understand how live music will come back in a vengeance once the floodgates open. Of course, all of this is dependent on controlling COVID-19. Considering the pandemic, we'll also need to address responsibility and insurance needs. Will fans sign off at the purchase of a ticket? Will insurance companies issue pandemic insurance within the public liability plans? All unanswered questions at this point. Why am I so optimistic? Personally, I feel there will be a lot of pent-up demand for concerts and festivals. I think ticket prices may start off lower than they were for the summer of 2020, but will escalate as the business normalizes and COVID is completely under control. The industry has a lot to make up for, since COVID has already created losses of $9 billion in the US. They can't make it all up in one season, but I predict it will happen over time. I also am looking forward to industry changes that artists will benefit from. When concerts and tours were canceled, artists started to present live streams. I think the first one I watched was Chris Martin presenting songs from his home. It wasn't very well produced, and additional live streams came out that also didn't catch my attention. People talked about them as a savior, but I didn't see that at all. Tip jars don't replace million-dollar play dates. As time progressed and major artists started to take virtual performances seriously, and live streaming adapted to production and presenting artists as an alternative to not being able to attend a live concert, the benefits started to emerge. Recently, Amazon Music and their gaming platform, Twitch, have incorporated live streaming of artist performances and interviews. Amazon is leading the way for other digital service providers to add live streaming functionality. Recently, I read an article in Billboard Bulletin that caught my attention regarding live streaming. I'm going to read a part of the first page as I think it is eye-opening. Not that I agree with all that is said, but it is food for thought and helps promote my thesis. The past few months, over 24 live streaming platforms are now fighting for attention, at least 10 of which launched in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. The field now includes platforms founded by such industry veterans as Pandora co-founder Tim Westergren, who launched Sessions at the end of April. Former AEG digital media executive John Petroselli's Bulldog DM, which went online in July. And former senior Sony music executive Thomas Hess, the CEO of DreamStage, which debuted in August. Meanwhile, long-standing social platforms, including Fans and House Party, have begun hosting live stream concerts. Investors are lining up to get in on the action. There is also the question of what will happen when concerts with crowds resume. For the moment, however, the numbers look promising. Live streams, a term that now encompasses a variety of experiences, from at-home Instagram live sets to high-end productions of virtual concerts, reached over 113 million US internet users the second quarter of 2020, nearly 60% of whom hadn't engaged with the format prior to the pandemic. There's plenty to watch. Over 44,000 global live stream events have been added to official Bands in Town artist pages since March 25th, according to the data-driven tour and live stream aggregator. Hess, who launched DreamStage on August 22nd, thinks that the concert live streaming will become a $6 billion industry within the next 3 years. It's a new market, he says, but it's an attractive market and it's here to stay. Westergren has a slightly higher prediction, estimated that the current value of the business is around $1 billion, with the potential to grow to tens of billions within 3 years. He predicts that it will do to touring what ride sharing did to the taxi industry. Eventually, he thinks the value of live streaming business will grow to 5 or even 10 times that of touring, which pandemic have been projected to reach $31 billion in total revenue sales in 2023. I can't say that I agree with Westergren that live streaming business will grow to 5 or 10 times that of touring, but I do see it augmenting artist tour revenue and festival revenue. Simply put, think of a festival that has a capacity of 75,000 people a day selling out. That includes 3-day passes, VIP passes, and single-day passes. Without going over the price points per pass, we do know that the gross ticket potential is limited to the amount of passes that can be sold. Of course, there are ancillaries added to every attendee's participation in the festival, but we already discussed that earlier. Let's now review how the festival can generate additional revenue from live streaming within the radius clause of the artist contracts. The festival offers live streaming to everyone within the radius clause. The price point breakdown can be for all 3 days or for 1 day. There isn't a limit of fan participation other than the radius accepted by the artist contracts. Price points don't have to be high because attendance isn't limited by a physical structure. The festival can offer merchandise and, based on contract constraints, can offer sponsorships and brand awareness. For the artist's tour, we can also offer live streams to sold-out shows. Once again, I suggest limiting the streams within the radius that doesn't compete with other shows on the artist's tour. Same as the festival, price points can be reasonable as the participation isn't limited by venue capacity. What's important with both of these models is that the live stream augment the live show revenue and doesn't have a negative effect on the sale of tickets. I suggest only doing this for sold-out shows. Ownership of the live stream should be negotiated with the promoters, and the artist should control whether there would be additional releases. To close, I want everyone to know I'm very optimistic on the continued success of live music after COVID-19. I'm also optimistic that opportunities will be there for our graduates. For the students in the audience, I suggest taking your classes seriously and having a positive attitude and outlook. Don't hesitate to reach out to industry personnel. Prior to reaching out, do your research and prepare questions and associate with the person's position. As the industry starts coming back, so will the entry-level positions. Look into internships and jobs that match your education and experience. I often hear students stating, that person was lucky, and that's how she got the job. It's not all luck, although luck is a part of it. All of us get lucky, some more than others, but one has to be prepared when luck comes your way. It's like surfing. Everyone can catch the big wave, but only those who practice and prepare can ride it in without falling. Thank you. I'm open to any questions that audience has.
Yeah, I think you're muted.
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Okay, no, I was saying thank you very much for your wonderful lecture, Professor Dorenfeld. It will inspire us to push ahead, looking for that bright future you depicted and all the wonderful possibilities that it holds for us. Right now, we can open the mic for the metaphoric mic for all the participants who are in the audience via YouTube or via Facebook. Please write your questions, your comments on the comment space there. Lo pueden hacer en castellano, no hay problema. Luego nosotros lo traducimos. Aprovechen este espacio para hacer las preguntas que tengan para el profesor Dorenfeld. Nosotros las podemos traducir, ya tenemos ahí un par. So the moderation of the Q&A session will be done by a colleague of mine, Professor Simón Calle Alzate. He is an assistant professor in the Department of Communication at Pontificia Universidad Javeriana. He's a doctor in ethnomusicology from Columbia University. He has worked in the public and private sector with expertise in policy and education, and has an important background in the creative industries. So we're really happy to have Professor Calle join us today for the Q&A session. Please remember that you can continue to ask questions during this Q&A session. You just use the comment space in the streaming platform of your choice. Professor Calle, thank you and welcome.
There is a question by Juan Sebastián. I think I'll say it in Spanish first and then in English. He posted it in English, but he asks, how would you say Napster and then iTunes and finally Spotify changed the music industry?
How would I say? Repeat
How
that
would you say Napster, then iTunes, and finally Spotify changed the music industry?
Oh, wow. Well, obviously Napster changed the music industry because we went completely from it, and then after Spotify, we went from a physical product to a totally digital product. The other is that access to music is probably much greater and much less expensive for fans with Spotify. The flip side of that, of course, is that the revenue for artists and songwriters is much less compared to what the physical product was. That being said, when I mentioned in my speech, what I talked about is that the industry has changed with both those, especially Spotify and Apple Music, that they are breaking more artists, and it's much easier for artists to get broken on their own or via labels and basically set them up for touring. So it's almost become, as what I said, is that the music is from Spotify have become marketing tools for the artist tours. So the revenue on a whole, if we have to look at the artists, and we should look at income as a whole, is actually greater than it was when it was physical. And so I always find when people complain, I don't see artists who are doing well on tours are complaining very much, considering what is generated for their ticket prices.
There's another question in a different...
Sorry to interrupt you. I have a question I want to make now. It's a follow-up question, actually. Just a few months ago, Daniel Ek, the Spotify CEO, made a comment you may have heard, saying that a music artist should not be happy to release one album a year, because now the size of the industry is much larger than that. What do you have to say about that, Professor?
I think all artists are different. I can't say that we could classify every artist in that classification of releasing one album a year or a bunch of singles and then an album or just singles. So I think it depends. I mean, there's artists like Adele who don't really release an album in a year. There's a lot of major artists who do not release an album or music every year. And there's artists who can release music fairly fast. It just depends how that artist, composes and writes and records. I just don't think we can put them all into one classification.
And that's a little bit of a throwback to the 60s, when you had lots of singles, at least 2 albums a year. Do you see some similarity in that?
I personally think, especially young artists, new artists, should release more music as singles, to get as much out there as possible. Because I find that I don't find that people listen to complete albums like they did when it was a physical product. And even if we go back when it was vinyl, you got more involved in the entire album than even when it went to digital when it went to CDs, because then you can move around easily also and just listen to different songs. And so I think, and today, obviously, if you release an album, it's decoupled anyhow. It's put up on Spotify and you can pick and choose what you want. So I don't see that as a necessity for all artists to do what he said. I mean, so it's just all different artists. And the thing is, obviously the classic artists, they release recordings, but nothing that really catches on compared to what their older stuff is. So
we have two more questions, one related with revenue and one related with education. I'm going to ask the first question, which would be the one with revenue, so that we continue on the same topic, and then I'll switch to education.
okay.
So Mario Mansi asks, the music industry main source of financing was the sale of its products, CDs, records, and before the pandemic, it was concerts. What do you think will be the next source of income for the music industry?
I still believe it's concerts. I still believe that once we get over COVID, the main source of revenue I'm talking more for artists, because the entire music industry, the record companies, unless they have an all rights deal, don't necessarily participate in concerts. So for the artists, and we're talking artists who do, obviously have lots of streams and are very successful. So they'll generate more from concerts. Live streaming, obviously, we heard how gentlemen or people who are starting live streaming companies feel what that business is going to be like. I think it'll be successful. I personally don't think it surpasses the touring, but I think it will be successful because as they can produce better live streams and incorporate actually a live production similar to tours, then I think people may adapt to it. But I still think it's, in the next few years, the number one revenue source for artists is live.
What do you think is the role of undergraduate music programs in order to help students during their studies in acquiring the necessary skills and knowledge that help them to develop in a sustainable career?
Well, I think the music programs I have seen pretty much cover most everything regarding the music industry. I also said this in my speech. I felt the one weak link over years has been live music. And I think it was because not enough people really understood what live music was about and how it generated revenue. Even I was spending more time when I started to teach college. I spent much more time, obviously, on the record side. I started a record label, so I believed that's where the business was. But as I went and looked back and did research, even going back on our tour, and we sold millions of records. We had a '1 album. Our ticket prices at that time were $17 and $18. And we only toured for about 69 shows or so. We still generated, even at that price point, we generated and made as much money on the tour as we did on the recording. That going forward, it's not even close. It's just not close. So I think teaching more about live music is really important. So all aspects of it. And then I also believe as much as you can get the industry involved in the teaching and being involved in coming in and talking about what their experiences are, and the more the students can connect with the industry between whether it's entry-level jobs or internships or something like I developed with Berklee Popular Music Institute, because that participates and with the actual industry. I think that's really important also to help students get involved in the industry.
Diego just asks another question. It's in Spanish. I'll translate it. He asks, which elements does a good live stream or live show should have? Is it just the artist? Is it the production? Is it both? Can you give any examples of producers or events that are remarkable?
That's a really good question. And yeah, Berklee is a Bachelor of Music. And we have over 4,000 students, and they all are really excellent musicians. So what I look at is two things: songwriting and performance. I take for granted the excellent musicianship because we have those. So I think what they need to do is learn how to present themselves on stage. I won't discuss the recording side because the question is more for the live side. You've got to take it serious. It's not when you get to perform on these bigger stages. What I learned when we started to do the festival, the stages are 60 feet wide and 40 feet deep and 5.5 to 6 feet high. Most young artists are performing in clubs, which is not even close. I mean, the club stage is 1 foot high, 2 feet high, 10 feet wide, 20 feet wide max. And so they have to learn how to perform on those stages. And I think they should take their performance serious. Now, when you talk about production, we're talking about obviously bigger artists who have a much larger budget. If the artist has that budget, I think production adds a lot to all genres of music. It doesn't make the artist worse player. It just enhances the artist's performance. It enhances the artist's songs. So yes, I believe in taking out a fairly large production. And one is now, well, at least they were taking out huge productions. Pop artists I've seen who have taking out for playing arenas, I've seen 24, 25, 48-foot semis of equipment for that show. That's all to enhance the performance. I've seen U2 on the 360 tour, which you can all look at online, had 125 trucks on the road at all times, not counting the trucks for all the steel they had to bring to build their stages on. And they had 3 stages flip-flopping across the world. So production means a lot. And I think even a young artist playing a club or playing a school should think about how they're going to present themselves. And what it bothers me when I see artists walk onto the stage from the front of the stage, they should actually think about their performance like a professional sporting team. They never walk onto the field from the audience. They come out all together as a group, prepared, ready to go on the first play. Same with artists. I expect them to do that. Everything's in tune. They're ready to go on. As soon as they hit the stage, they go into their first song. Their set's organized. They're performers. And I think the most 2 important pieces of a successful artist are great songs and great live performance.
Javier has a
Yes, I
follow-up
have a little
question.
bit of a follow-up question. You're mentioning, Professor Dorenfeld, something that sounds a lot like mystique, like a certain intangible element that comes from having that star quality, perhaps. You were there at the very beginning of this professionalization of the music industry, where these were basically underground countercultural musicians who probably wouldn't want to be seen next to an accountant or someone who is quote unquote the man. And now it seems that the pendulum has has swung to the point of, I need someone who is a professional in marketing. I need someone who knows how to run the numbers for me.
Well, I think at some point, yeah. I mean, there's artists who handled their business initially. They're going to have to. So they're going to have to think about all those pieces. I mean, they can't afford to hire someone. So how are they going to, present themselves on YouTube? How are they going to create their recordings that are good enough to be on Spotify and compete? Artists do it. I mean, we see it day in and day out. We see it a lot. Young artists doing this. Of course, we see all these, pop artists. We see artists, obviously from K-pop, from Korea, which is totally, have producers and, basically stylists in every aspect. Those exist too. So, but I still think there's an avenue for artists to come right out of their basement and become successful. I personally feel, when I mentioned the tip jars jokingly on the live streaming when it first started, I don't think any artist is going to come out making a lot of money from doing their live streams until it kind of starts catching on and people start being willing to pay for tickets to it or passes to it. But I do feel out of all of this worldwide, there is going to be artists who are discovered off their streams. There's going to be young artists who are going to make it out of this. How many, I don't know. But the ones are going to have good songs. They're going to think about what they present, how they present it, make it interesting. Then, obviously, you can go in and work with labels and management and producers and stylists and accountants and all of that. All of that exists once an artist becomes successful. But it's still seriously up to the artists on how they want to present themselves and what they believe in. And I think the greatest artists are the ones who kind of grow as they move forward. Obviously, we have the classic artists, the Rolling Stones and stuff like that, who've been around forever and they are who they are. And there's nothing, they have so much of a catalog and so much of a mystique that nothing is ever going to obviously stop that band. I always jokingly would say, when people would ask me, when do you think you'll retire? And I said, well, as long as the Rolling Stones can get on stage and perform, I can get in front of a classroom and speak. Wow, they're still performing. I don't know how long I could speak in front of a classroom. So I think there's a lot that people don't pay attention to when it's on what makes an artist successful. And it's not all the same, obviously, because we can't have a singer-songwriter isn't the same as a K-pop artist. There's all different ways of getting there. But Ed Sheeran is a singer-songwriter with a guitar and a looping and became a stadium act. But he has great songs and he knows how to present himself. He's thought about it, he's put it together, and he started out when he opened up for Taylor Swift, and the promoter, who was Louis Messina, who's been around for years, recognized something special there, and they worked on getting him his tour, and rest is kind of history. So I think there's opportunity for artists all the time. I don't know if that answers your question, but yes, if you can work with someone who can help you, but they have to help you present what you're trying to present, what you're feeling, because ultimately you're going to have to go out there and do it.
Javier has another small question.
Yes, but before I want to let Dr. Rosas ask his question, because I think he has also a question related to this.
Well, not related. It is more a macro question. I was wondering if you believe that the government should have or have specific provisions for media, arts, and culture in the stimulus bills.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Obviously, the ones that are really getting hurt right now, obviously are, if we look at the touring industry, all the clubs, they don't have any backup revenue. So they're closing down. We need clubs, all the crew and everyone who supports an artist, even all the band members, if it's a solo artist like, Beyonce, who may have a large group of people playing, but they're on salary. They're not performing when she's not performing. And so, I know lots of road crew. I know people who were out on tour, and they're getting additional jobs, or they're basically self-practitioners. They can't even collect unemployment. So yes, I think if the government could put into bills that can help support them until and that doesn't, I don't really have the answer for everything on that, but I think we need the arts supported, because the arts, not everyone is generating the revenues of the artists I was talking about. And the reason I kind of focus on these large artists is that they employ and finance pretty much everyone in the industry until obviously now it's all stopped. And so I know lots of people, former students of mine, who are obviously furloughed or some laid off. I know lots of members of bands, same thing. It's across the board, and I know clubs that are closed, and whatever the government can do to assist would be definitely beneficial. I don't work in the government. I don't know how many other organizations or groups or industries are going after, obviously, support, but the arts are really important. Seriously important for people, and it's what makes people whole. It's what takes people through times like this, is music. Listening to music puts you in a better space than other things. So I think it needs to be supported. It's just the question is, how deep do we go? Because I think, the guitar, stage right guitar tech for the guitar player is also losing his job. And he's part of music also, or she's part of music. It could be male or female. Just so every aspect of it. It's gonna be interesting to see what's gonna happen on all fronts. I was talking to a tour accountant who does major tours, and his concern, which is interesting, should be interesting to all your students, is that he feels the support companies are not going to be there. So the busing companies may go out of business. The production companies may go out of business. And so when he'll need these production companies, he'll need the busing companies and every other aspect of the business, the lighting companies, the sound companies, all of those things, the video companies, screening, all of that. Is there going to be enough companies and people to support the different tours? Because like I mentioned earlier, 2020 tours, Billie Eilish, for example, I know her tour manager, her whole tour was basically sold out. Her whole production is in trucks. I think she did 3 dates. So all those shows basically be rescheduled. And other tours will come out. And I don't think there's going to be enough people to support the tours on the working side, because some will get new jobs. Some who are older will say, forget that, I'm done. I'm going to go find something new, which is, I think, I hate to say this is an opportunity, but it's going to be an opportunity for yours and my graduates also. Same with the agencies. There isn't anybody there. I'm fortunate that most of my graduates are still working at Live Nation, but a lot of people are gone. So So yes, if the government can help, yes. I just don't know how to personally make that happen.
We have another question in another line by Isabella Gomati. She asks, where is the music industry going in terms of music genre? Do you think the pandemic will or has affected the different music genres and types of music that students are interested in?
Wow. I think I still believe in what I said. I think there's so many genres now that are popular. This is the best of all the things coming out of Spotify and the streaming industry, is that so many genres have gotten popular. It really, when it was physical, then there was kind of controls on everything, but now it's all huge. Do I think all of them will stay? Yeah, I do. I think there may be new artists. I think the ones who are really successful, there's pent-up demand for them. Drake just released a new single, and it's getting millions and millions of streams. And so I don't think it's going away. I honestly think it's going to stay. I don't know of any other genres. Maybe there'll be a new genre. I don't know of any others that are going to come out. We've covered almost every one, and every one has huge artists. Like I mentioned, country's big, and hip hop's big, and Latin's big, and rock's still big. I mean, it's all over the place. So I think it's still there. I think it's not going to go away. I think their fans are there. I guess the bigger question is, one of the questions is, what can people afford? That I don't know going forward, and what employment is going to be worldwide and all of that. So how that affects ticket prices, that is an open question. The other bigger one is obviously, when does this all come about? When will it be over COVID-19 to actually do a concert with a large group of people? When will that be acceptable? When will people feel comfortable enough to go when there's a vaccine? When is that 2021 summer, or is it already going into 2022? I think those are the big questions, because we only can afford so much, obviously. But I'm hoping, because I'm booking festivals, I'm hoping for my class that there are something happening summer 2021, so that we can actually go there and participate.
Thank you, Jeff. I think Javier has a another follow-up question.
It's kind of related. It's about trying to predict the future, which is something hard. I'm an economist by training, and we are famously bad predicting things. So I would.
Yeah, you're an economist. What do you feel it's going to be? Because that's really important. The economy, it's what's going to happen, obviously, to people working and to lots of bands and clubs and all of that. But what's going to happen? Are there, is the economy going to come back? Are people going to have enough to buy tickets and so on and so forth? So I'll throw that question back on you.
But thankfully, that was not my question, because I don't think there is an easy answer for that, and no. I'm not sure if I am that optimistic regarding at least developing countries, if we'll be able to bounce back to the levels of consumption we had in entertainment and cultural goods before.
Yep.
Hopefully we will, but I also share your belief that this is what will get us through: art, the beautiful things that we can create and share with others. So there we will have to find a way to share it without having to resort to money or the ways we used to consume things before. But the question I had was related to Colombia. You've been active in the international mega festival circuit in Latin America, even in Chile.
Yeah.
So how do you see the Colombian music industry playing a role in this reactivation of the festival circuit after COVID-19?
Well, basically, the more opportunities artists have to where they're going, the more artists will go there. So if we use Lollapalooza example, and I know Lollapalooza was looking to do a festival, I think, at one time in Bogota. But if we look at it, if they can play, like right now, they could do Brazil and Chile and Argentina. If they can add more, they benefit from that because the cost to get there is astronomical. And so for the headliners, it's one thing, but other artists who are support it's difficult. So the more shows they can do. So the more, if we have, Colombia has shows also because of the fact they could actually do one-offs in these places, even if they don't have the festival. But if they do have a festival, that even benefits them more. But based on the radius clauses again, and I didn't know if everyone understands what a radius clause is in the audience, and if they don't, I'll explain it. They could come in and do additional shows. So they could do their festivals and they could do shows in Colombia, what Colombia will basically justify for them to do. I've seen it before. I've seen them doing one-off shows or another festival or whatever. So I think, I think there's people everywhere who want to see certain artists. And I think the artists between the promoters in the different countries know what the demand is, and that's what they'll bring in. And so I think it's going to be, once again, depending on the economy, but I think there'll be enough that artists will come. They'll just have to, if they're going to go, they have to be able to do shows everywhere. That's the real question, because it's so expensive to do one-offs. I don't know if that completely answered your question, but I think you'll see them coming. How's that?
That's good. I'm a big fan of international festivals, so if they keep on coming down, that's great.
Well, let me ask, do you feel there's enough of an audience demand for a festival, 50,000 people?
Oh, yeah. We have a new arena, the Movistar Arena. It's pretty large. I think it houses 20-something plus people. And there is also a yearly festival, probably the size of Lollapalooza, Chile. So the demand is there, I think.
Yeah, I think, well, that's the one. I think the reason why they probably didn't bring Lollapalooza into Colombia, right? Because you already have a festival that competes with them. And I guess they felt that there was only so many festivals they can handle. You have a 20,000 seat arena, and there are artists who can fill that arena and fill the same arena in Argentina and in Chile and in Brazil, and all of them, the economy is well enough to support that, and all the other countries in South America, they'll come. They're coming. If there's an audience, they're coming there. And if you have a space for them to perform. So what they'll do, the difficult part used to be is getting the equipment from one country to another country with the mountainous regions and all that. But they do it now. They basically fly it or whatever. And I recall when I did the festivals, all three of the festivals, and the Foo Fighters were headlining. I think I may have mentioned this to you. They took a lot of their favorite bands who were on the festival, and they put all their equipment on the Foo Fighters plane to take them down there. So, artists support each other. I'm never going to look at it that's not going to happen. It's going to happen as long as the governments stay intact and support everything. As Dean Rosas mentioned, we need support all the way around. We need support for the people, obviously, who are going to the festival, let alone the arts. So I'm optimistic that they will be going there. So it's been a big market, you know. So
a question here with a comment about also local producers, but the question, I'll read the question and then I'll read the comment. It's from Gareth Gordon. Thinking about the economics of touring, are stadium artists going to have to accept a smaller cut of the box office in order to allow local support companies to survive? And then he says, local producers say visiting stadium artists take over 95% of box office profits, making it unprofitable for local producers to put the show on.
Well, that's all true. I mean, artists, the 90-10 deal is really common, and some get up to the 95. That's, the split at a certain point in ticket sales. I think there's going to be, the artists will have to start out participating in the actual expense of the show, which means that I think artists will be, there might not be these huge guarantees. There could be still the splits, but the guarantees might be less, so that the artist is also participating in the risks, considering what we've seen happen and how much obviously losses there are. That being said, as things progress and as tickets sell and as artists start selling out again, those same artists will go back to wanting their guarantees because they are a proven artists that can sell. The split deals, what's happening a lot on all these major artists because of what's happening in the consolidation of promoters that I mentioned originally happened in 1999 with SFX, that I said that was what changed the industry, just like Napster changed the industry in the recording end, is that a lot of promoters are consolidated. So we have two huge promotion companies, both worldwide, Live Nation, AEG Live, and they may have the entire tour. They could come in and co-promote with local promoters, but the tour is going to be, a lot. If it's a world tour like Live Nation Global Touring, it'll be a Live Nation tour. And so artists doing one-offs with different promoters, if they obviously know the promoters and are familiar with them and feel comfortable, then they can do that. So we can have Ocesa is a big promoter in Mexico, and they were actually going to be sold to Live Nation, but I don't think that happened. So there's lots of local promoters in all the different countries, and I see them still pretty much doing pretty strong business. Strong enough business that Live Nation wouldn't want to go in and buy Ocesa. So I think there's room. It's just competitive in it, and these big touring companies, the artists who are major feel comfortable with them because of the fact that they've worked with them for years and that they know that what their guarantees are, and they know what those companies can do. So all that being said, doesn't mean that there's not a place for the independent concert promoter.
We have a brief question, a last question by Javier.
Yes, it's a question related to one topic you touched on before, and it's legacy artists. The consumption in streaming has been increasing for obvious reasons during the quarantine and the lockdown. But we only have so many hours a day. So if all my spare time to stream music is going to Bob Dylan and I don't know, and Johnny Mitchell and artists who are like into the fifth decade of their career, how can emerging artists, perhaps our own students, deal with that?
How can they deal with becoming
with getting a little share of my 8 hours of music listening a day?
Well, I believe there's going to be artists who are going to maybe not. You may be listening like me. I don't stream a lot. I mean, I just don't do it. I've seen a ton, lots of shows. I go to any show pretty much I want. But I think there's going to be artists that are going to break out of this time period. They may not break out into your streaming catalog initially. You may not have the time, but your students may have the time. And those students will listen and watch these artists. And if they find them interesting, they'll tell others. And the artists will gradually become popular. And then you'll look into it and you'll stream it because you know about it. You can see that artist starting to break out. I mean, I can't name all these artists that have broken out in the last 20 years, but there's a lot. There's a lot of artists that have broken out since I started working in the music industry. In fact, like I mentioned, all these different genres. So there's a Latin artist, Rosalia. I think I mentioned that I went to see her at Lollapalooza. I mean, she broke out of Spain. She was, basically a street artist. So if they're good, they take their craft serious. I've seen her perform. She's a great live performer. She takes it very seriously. Some will break it out. There will be some. I will argue that day in and day out. I don't know who they are, but there will be some, and they probably are not going to break out because of definitely people my generation. And you're old enough. They may not break out because of your generation either, but you will become a fan because they'll be breaking out of your students, and your students will talk about it, and those students from all over around the world will talk about it, and they will break out, or they could be, somewhat an artist that's like a K-pop artist. I mean, what BTS has done is, whoever thought that something would be that big? And Blackpink came out of there, all those artists. So I don't think I think there's room. I think it's going to keep happening. And I think there'll be more coming out of this time period. Some new artists, some young artists will be breaking out. Hopefully it's one out of your school, one out of my school.
I think that's a wonderful note to end the conversation and the lecture in, unless, I don't know, Professor Rosas or Professor Calle have another comment. Okay, so I think that summarizes the spirit of this talk. One of our students just mentioned Lil Nas X in the chat, in the comments, and Lil Nas X broke out of YouTube, downloading a beat, a pirated beat, and sampling that on top of a video game he captured, and that's how Old Town Road became the monster hit it was last year. So I think if that's not a success story to inspire our students, I can't come up with any better than that.
Yeah, it's nothing. I mean, there's new artists constant, more now than ever. I think that's the time right now is obviously not good for anything, but the time to create music is good because that's what they have time to do. And what's going to come out after COVID, I think we'll see a lot of new artists. I think there's lots of opportunities. They have to be special. Great songs, great live performance, understand how to present themselves. And back to the other piece, everyone has to be a little lucky. But once again, if they get the opportunity, they better be ready. That's all. Thank you so much. It was really fun. Hopefully we got through a lot. Hopefully students, they could reach out to me if they have some more questions. I'm around, but
thank you so much. Once again, let me thank you, Professor Jeff Dorenfeld, for being so kind and sharing this time and knowledge with us. I'm sure we will not forget this evening. I also want to thank Professor Rosas for joining us for the conversation and his inspirational work.
Thank you, Javier, and thank you, Professor Dorenfeld.
I had a great time also.
You had a great
Thank
time.
you for making my night. See, things come out of COVID. All right. Thank you.
I also want to thank Professor Simon Calle for helping us with the questions and helping us look into the state of the music business in the face of the pandemic and what lies ahead. I'll switch back to Spanish to wrap the evening up, if that's okay with you.
All right. Thank you. I'll leave now. And so, pleasure. Let's stay in touch.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Para los organizadores de este segundo encuentro de Industrias Creativas y Culturales, CultMarts 2020, ha sido un gusto haber contado con su asistencia y participación en esta keynote lecture de apertura. Les hacemos llegar nuestra gratitud a nombre de la Facultad de Ciencias Económicas y Administrativas, la Facultad de Artes, la Facultad de Arquitectura y Diseño, la Facultad de Comunicación y Lenguaje, el Departamento de Ciencias Políticas, la Design Factory Javeriana, el Centro Javeriano de Emprendimiento, la Asistencia para la Creación Artística, Centro Ático y Brand Spa. Los invitamos a que nos acompañen el día de mañana a las 6 p.m. en este mismo espacio para el panel temático Innovación y Transformaciones en las Industrias Creativas y Culturales. Pueden registrarse o solicitar más información en www.cultmarts.com. Muchas gracias por su asistencia y que tengan una muy buena noche.